Ontario government has announced it has come to an agreement with Quebec on a cap-and-trade greenhouse gas emission agreement. With more on exactly how it works, here's the CBC's Mike Crawley from Toronto.
The government is going to set a hard limit on the amount of pollution that each particular sector of the economy can produce. And then within that industry, individual businesses will have their own quotas. And if you're a business and you get to be more efficient at your pollution, you can then take those credits of the carbon that you didn't pollute and sell them off to other businesses that want to pollute. The idea is that overall this will bring down the greenhouse gas emissions. It's a system that is already in place in Quebec and in California, and it is slightly different from the system that exists in British Columbia, where there's a price on carbon, what they call a carbon tax. The government is now saying that what's going to happen is you'll have 3/4 of Canada's population in some sort of a system that puts a price on pollution.
That's the CBC's Mike Crawley in Toronto. Week 2 of the Mike Duffy trial is underway in Ottawa, with a number of new witnesses scheduled to take the stand over the next few days. Here's the CBC's Louise Elliott.
Another Senate official will be called to talk about the Red Chamber's contracting rules today. She'll be followed by Gerald Donahue, Duffy's friend, who was the recipient of some juicy contracts from the senator. Donahue, of course, has already been in the headlines for getting $65,000 from Duffy over 4 years. We know from court documents that the RCMP investigated that money, which went to Donahue's Ottawa construction company. The mounting found there was no tangible work done, and yet Donahue was paid $200 an hour. The only work product the RCMP could find was some online research and verbal advice on obesity. The Crown says this was actually a scheme, a kind of slush fund, and that Duffy used Donahue to pass money to others in his inner circle outside the scrutiny of the Senate. Some of the money went to his personal trainer, and we know in one case to a makeup artist. The Crown's going to argue that this all amounted to treats and favors to Duffy's friends and not Senate business.
That is CBC's Louise Elliott in Ottawa. UTC has released a disturbing report on the number of children kidnapped or displaced by Boko Haram's ongoing atrocities in Nigeria. CBC's Jeff Semple has the details.
The UNICEF report headline sums it up quite poetically. Missing Childhoods is the name, released one day before that grim anniversary, 1 year since Boko Haram abducted more than 200 schoolgirls in northeast Nigeria. And 1 year later, the majority of those girls are still missing. And UNICEF says children forced to flee the Boko Haram insurgency doubled in the past year, now up to 800,000. Many of those children also believed to have been abducted, boys used to fight, girls forced into marriage and rape. The name Boko Haram means Western education is forbidden, and UNICEF says that students and teachers have been targeted deliberately, with hundreds of schools destroyed and hundreds of teachers and school children murdered. Military officials believe that those 200 schoolgirls have been kept alive, though split into smaller groups. Some moved outside the country. The hope is that this recent growing military pressure might push the militants to release at least some of the girls as part of the deal to save their own skin.
That's the CBC's Jeff Semple in London. A 49-year-old southwestern Ontario man accused of threatening to blow up the Parliament buildings will appear in court today for a bail hearing. David Osterbrook was arrested on Friday and charged with one count of hoax terrorist activity and one count of uttering threats. Osterbrook allegedly made the threat in a telephone call to the parliamentary library. The city of Paris is now a step closer to bidding for the 2024 Summer Olympic Games. A municipal resolution has been passed, and the next step now is to draft a formal application. Paris last hosted the Olympics in 1924 and has mounted unsuccessful bids for the 1992, 2008, and 2012 games. And that is the CBC News to this hour.